The Nutcracker exploded at midnight. One moment Clara held a wooden toy, the next she was airborne, her back slamming against the basement wall as golden light ripped through her tiny room. The wood cracked, splintered, reformed into something impossible. Into someone impossible. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's go back a few hours, to when Clara Thornwood was still just a servant scrubbing floors, and the Nutcracker was still just trash. Christmas Eve at Blackmoor Pack mansion meant two things: the winter moon ball upstairs, and double shifts for the servants below. Clara pressed her scrub brush into the marble, working the same circular motion she'd perfected over 22 years of practice. Her knees ached against the cold stone. Her hands were raw from the pine-scented cleaner that Luna Evangeline insisted upon, said it masked the common smell of the help. Above her head, the ballroom thundered with music and laughter. 300 wolves celebrating in designer gowns and tailored suits, champagne flutes catching the light of 1,000 candles. Clara had helped arrange those candles this morning. Had polished every surface until her reflection stared back at her, distorted and strange. She wouldn't see the ball itself. Servants entered through the back. Cleaned before and after. Never during. That was fine. Clara had stopped wanting things she couldn't have years ago. Thornwood. The head housekeeper's bark echoed down the corridor. Trash detail. Now. They're between courses. Clara set down her brush without complaint. Trash detail meant hauling bags through the service corridors while the guests ate their 7th course of whatever endangered species Alpha Silas had ordered killed for the occasion. It meant staying invisible, staying silent, staying exactly what they expected her to be. Nothing. She'd been nothing since the day they found her, a baby abandoned in the snow outside the pack borders, no parents, no pack bond, no wolf inside her waiting to emerge. Just a crescent-shaped birthmark on her inner wrist and a will to survive that refused to quit. Alpha Silas had taken her in. Not out of kindness. Blackmoor Pack needed servants, and orphans were cheaper than hiring from the human towns. Clara had scrubbed her first floor at age 6. By 10, she'd learned that keeping her head down meant fewer bruises. By 15, she'd accepted that she would live and die in this basement, unmated, unnoticed, unmourned. 22 now, and nothing had changed. The service corridors wound behind the ballroom like arteries carrying away waste. Clara moved through them with practiced efficiency, collecting bags from the designated stations. The garbage was impressive: half-eaten delicacies, crushed flowers, broken decorations that had failed to meet Luna Evangeline's standards. It was at the 3rd station that she saw it. A Nutcracker. Wooden, old-fashioned, the kind humans put out during Christmas. But this one was broken, left arm missing, paint chipped along the jaw, one eye scratched almost clean. Someone had thrown it away with the wilted centerpieces. Clara should have kept walking. Should have added it to her bag with everything else and continued her rounds like a good little servant. Instead, she stopped. The Nutcracker seemed to look at her. Which was ridiculous. It was wood and paint, nothing more. But something about those scratched eyes made her chest tight. Something about the broken arm, the chipped paint, the way it had been discarded without thought. She knew what it felt like to be thrown away. Her fingers brushed the wood, and warmth bloomed against her skin. Faint, barely there, but real. The Nutcracker was warm. What on earth are you doing? Clara spun. Margot Kane stood in the corridor, champagne flute in hand, golden dress hugging curves that drew every unmated wolf's attention. The beta's daughter. Beautiful, cruel, and utterly certain of her place in the world. Nothing. Clara tucked her hands behind her back. Just collecting trash. Margot's eyes narrowed, then dropped to the garbage bag. To the Nutcracker visible at the top. Her laugh was a sharp, pretty thing. Oh, this is precious. The packless mutt found herself a friend. 2 other servants rounded the corner, drawn by Margot's voice or just unlucky timing. They saw the scene and froze. Clara watched their expressions shift from surprise to cruel amusement. Alliances were survival here. And Clara had none. Look at her face. Margot stepped closer, champagne sloshing. She actually wants to keep it. The broken, discarded trash wants to keep broken, discarded trash. She raised her voice, ensuring everyone could hear. Of course the packless mutt wants the broken trash. It's the only thing that would ever want her back. Laughter. Sharp, obedient laughter from the servants who knew better than to cross the beta's daughter. Clara said nothing. She'd learned that words only made it worse, only gave them more ammunition, only extended the game. Silence frustrated them. Eventually, they got bored. Margot's smile flickered, just a moment of irritation at Clara's non-reaction. Then she shrugged, already losing interest. Whatever. Enjoy your little wooden boyfriend, mutt. It's the only one you'll ever get. She swept away, golden dress trailing behind her like a victory banner. The other servants followed, still snickering. Clara waited until their footsteps faded. Then she reached into the bag and pulled out the Nutcracker. The wood was still warm against her palm. She tucked it under her coat and finished her rounds. Her room was barely a room, more of a closet with a cot, carved out of the basement's forgotten corners. No window. No lock on the door. A single lamp that flickered when the wiring felt temperamental. But it was hers. The only space in the world that belonged to Clara Thornwood. She set the Nutcracker on her small table and studied it under the lamp's unsteady light. The damage was worse than she'd thought. Beyond the missing arm and chipped paint, tiny cracks spiderwebbed through the wood. Someone had loved this thing once, then broken it, then thrown it away. The story felt familiar. Clara pulled her repair kit from under the cot, wood glue salvaged from a maintenance closet, paint samples she'd collected from discarded cans over the years. She wasn't supposed to have them. Servants weren't supposed to have anything beyond their uniforms and their duties. But Clara had learned that small rebellions, invisible ones, kept her sane. She worked carefully, filling cracks with glue, dabbing paint over the worst chips. The arm was gone forever, she couldn't replace that, but she could make the rest of him whole again. Him. She was thinking of it as him now. Ridiculous. I know what it's like, she murmured, dabbing red paint along the wooden lips. Being thrown away. Being broken. Her brush moved to the scratched eye, trying to restore the pupil. But someone has to believe broken things can still be beautiful. Even if no one else does. Even if it's just me. The Nutcracker stared back with his one good eye. Clara could have sworn the painted mouth softened. A trick of the light. Had to be. Upstairs, the ball was ending. She heard the distant sounds of guests departing, cars pulling away, the mansion settling into its late-night quiet. Luna Evangeline would be critiquing every detail of the event while Alpha Silas retired to his study to drink whiskey and brood over pack politics. Clara knew their routines the way she knew her own heartbeat. Survival required it. The clock tower began to chime. 1. 2. 3. Clara yawned, exhaustion finally catching up. She'd been awake since 4 in the morning, and tomorrow would start just as early. 7. 8. 9. She looked at the Nutcracker, repaired as well as she could manage. Better, at least. No longer quite so broken. 10. 11. Happy Christmas, little soldier, she whispered, and pressed a soft kiss to his wooden forehead. 12. The wood grew warm. Clara pulled back, blinking. The warmth spread, intensified, became heat that shouldn't have been possible from dead wood and old paint. Then the Nutcracker began to glow. Golden light poured from the cracks she'd just filled, from the scratched eye, from every damaged inch of him. Clara scrambled backward, but there was nowhere to go. Her room was too small, and the light was everywhere now, blinding, searing. The wood cracked. Not breaking, transforming. The Nutcracker expanded, twisted, reformed in ways that defied physics and sanity. Clara heard herself scream as the explosion of light threw her against the wall, as the shape in the center of her room grew larger, larger, impossibly large. Then the light died. And a man stood where the Nutcracker had been. He was massive, at least 6'4", shoulders broad enough to block out her lamp's meager glow. Scars covered his bare skin, dozens of them, layered over muscles that spoke of violence and survival. His hair was dark, wild, too long. His eyes blazed molten gold. Alpha eyes. He was completely naked. And his canines were extended, his claws out, and he was looking around her tiny basement room with 12 years of caged fury burning in his expression. Clara couldn't breathe. Couldn't move. Couldn't process what she was seeing. The man's gaze snapped to her. In one stride he crossed the room, his hand closing around her throat, lifting her off her feet, pinning her against the wall she'd just been thrown into. His claws dimpled her skin. His face was inches from hers, beautiful, terrifying, utterly unhinged. "Where is my brother?" he roared, and the sound shook dust from the ceiling. "Where is Silas?" If you are enjoying this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 2. Clara couldn't breathe. The man's grip was iron around her throat, his fingers pressing into her pulse points with a pressure that should have killed her already. She'd seen Alpha Silas crush a wolf's windpipe with less effort than this. She'd watched wolves die for lesser offenses than startling an alpha. But she wasn't dying. His eyes blazed molten gold, alpha eyes, but brighter and more terrifying than any she'd encountered in 22 years of serving wolves. These eyes held something beyond dominance. Something ancient and furious and broken. And she was warm. Not the warmth of fading consciousness, but something else. Something coming from her own skin. Her birthmark was glowing. The crescent moon on her inner wrist pulsed with soft silver light, visible even in the dim basement room, even through his fingers wrapped around her throat. The glow spread where his skin touched hers, and Clara felt heat bloom through her entire body, not painful, not burning, just present. Alive. The man froze. His gaze dropped to her wrist. To the mark she'd carried since birth, the one the pack called a defect, an ugliness, proof that even her own body was wrong. His grip loosened. Not releasing, but no longer crushing. That mark. His voice came out raw, destroyed, like vocal cords that hadn't been used in years trying to remember how to form words. "How do you have that mark?" Clara gasped for air, her vision swimming. "I don't, I've always." He released her. She crumpled against the wall, hands flying to her throat, sucking in desperate breaths. The man stumbled backward, and for the first time, Clara saw something other than rage in his expression. Horror. Wonder. Confusion. He was staring at his own hands. Human hands. Scarred, calloused, shaking. He turned them over, flexed his fingers, touched his own face like he'd never felt it before. A sound escaped him, half laugh, half sob, and he pressed his palms against his eyes. 12 years, he whispered. 12 years, and I have hands again. Clara's heart was pounding so hard she could hear it. Her throat burned where his fingers had been. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to scream for help, to do anything except sit on this cold floor watching a naked madman have a breakdown. Instead, she asked, "Who are you?" He dropped his hands. Looked at her with those impossible golden eyes. "I am Dominic Varen." The name came out like a blade. Firstborn son of King Aldrich and Queen Isolde. True alpha king of the 12 packs. And I had been imprisoned in that wooden body for 12 years while my brother stole everything that belonged to me. Clara's blood went cold. Varen. The royal family. The massacre. Everyone knew the story, it was pack history, taught to every pup as a cautionary tale. 12 years ago, rogues had attacked the royal palace on the night of the young prince's coronation. They'd slaughtered King Aldrich, Queen Isolde, Princess Sarah, and the entire royal guard. Only Prince Silas had survived, hidden in the safe room by his father's final command. Silas had emerged from the ashes to claim his family's throne. Had rebuilt from tragedy to become the strongest alpha king in 3 generations. The story was inspiring. Heroic. And apparently, a complete lie. That's impossible, Clara breathed. The royal family was killed by rogues. Everyone knows. Everyone knows what Silas told them. Dominic's voice cracked with bitterness. Everyone knows the story my brother crafted while I watched from his study desk, unable to move, unable to speak, unable to do anything but exist inside a wooden prison. He began to pace, his movements jerky, unstable, a man relearning how to use a body he'd been separated from for over a decade. He came to me that night. My own brother. My blood. The words poured out like poison finally finding release. He'd made a deal with a witch. Seraphina Bloodmoon. Dark magic, the kind our family had outlawed generations ago. She cursed me into that form, the Nutcracker, and the curse was designed to be perfect. I couldn't die. Couldn't age. Couldn't shift or speak or even close my eyes. Clara's stomach turned. You were conscious? Every second. Dominic stopped pacing, and the stillness was somehow worse than the movement. I felt Silas pick me up after the transformation. I heard him laugh. I watched through painted wooden eyes as he walked to our parents' chambers and he couldn't finish. His whole body shuddered, and Clara saw his claws extend involuntarily before retracting again. He killed them himself, Dominic said quietly. Our mother. Our father. Sarah was only 14. She begged him to stop. She called him brother and begged, and he. Stop. Clara's voice came out strangled. Please. Stop. She didn't want to hear more. Couldn't bear the images his words were painting. But she also couldn't look away from his face, from the devastation carved into every line of it. This was real. She didn't know how she knew, but she did. No one could fake this kind of anguish. Silas burned the palace to hide the evidence, Dominic continued, quieter now. Blamed rogues. Claimed he was the sole survivor. And I became a trophy on his desk, the brother he'd defeated, frozen in wood, forced to watch him build a kingdom on our family's ashes. 12 years. Clara couldn't imagine it. Couldn't fathom being trapped, aware, helpless for 12 years. How did you survive? How did you not go mad? Something flickered in his golden eyes. Who says I didn't? The silence stretched between them, heavy with horror and grief and impossible truth. Clara should have been afraid. This man had just tried to kill her, had admitted to potentially being insane, had told her a story that would get them both executed if anyone overheard. But when she looked at him, really looked, she didn't see a monster. She saw someone who'd been thrown away. Someone broken. Someone who'd survived something unsurvivable and was still standing. She knew what that felt like. Silas rules all 12 packs now, she said softly. He's more powerful than any alpha king before him. The massacre, your family's massacre, it's ancient history. No one questions his claim. Dominic absorbed this like a physical blow. She watched him process it, watched the hope that had flickered briefly in his eyes die a slow death. And me? He asked. Does anyone remember that I existed? Clara searched her memory. The history she'd been taught, the stories the pack told, the portraits in the mansion's halls. Silas is listed as the only heir. The crown prince who survived. There's no record of an older brother. No paintings, no mentions, nothing. He erased me. Dominic's voice was hollow. He didn't just kill our family. He erased me from existence. He moved toward the wall and slammed his fist into it. The impact should have cracked stone, and Alpha's strength could shatter concrete without effort. Instead, his knuckles split and bled, entirely human damage. Dominic stared at his bleeding hand. Then he closed his eyes, and Clara watched him concentrate, watched him reach for something internal. Nothing happened. He tried again. His face contorted with effort, with desperation. Still nothing. No. The word was barely audible. No, no, no. What's wrong? My wolf. Dominic's eyes flew open, and for the first time, Clara saw fear in them. I can't reach my wolf. I can't shift. He held out his hand, clearly trying to extend claws. They flickered, there for a moment, then gone. He bared his teeth, and his canines lengthened briefly before receding. The curse. He laughed, and it was an awful sound. The witch's curse. It's only partially broken. I have my body back, but my wolf, my power, my alpha aura, they're still locked away. Clara remembered the kiss. The warmth that had spread from the Nutcracker before the transformation. I kissed you, she said. I kissed the Nutcracker at midnight. That's what broke the curse. Partially broke it. Dominic flexed his hands again, testing limits, finding them everywhere. There must be more. The witch would have built in safeguards, conditions. A kiss started the breaking, but something else is required to finish it. What else? I don't know. His jaw tightened. But I know who does. The witch who cast the curse. Seraphina Bloodmoon. She's the only one who knows the full terms. Clara filed the name away. Seraphina Bloodmoon. Dark Witch. The woman who'd helped Silas destroy everything. Dominic's attention shifted back to her, and Clara felt the weight of his gaze like a physical thing. Without his alpha aura, he shouldn't have been able to affect her this way. But those golden eyes saw too much. You have no wolf, he said. It wasn't a question. No. I've never had one. No pack bond either. I can always feel pack bonds, even now, they're like threads connecting wolves to each other. You have none. I'm packless. An orphan. They found me in the snow when I was a baby. Clara shrugged, the old hurt dulled by years of acceptance. No parents, no pack, no wolf. Just the birthmark. Dominic moved closer, and Clara forced herself not to flinch as he took her wrist. His touch was gentle now, almost reverent, as he studied the crescent moon with its 3 drops. This is the mark of the moon's chosen, he said quietly. I've only seen it once before in my life. Where? On my mother. He looked up, met her eyes. The queen bore this exact mark on her inner wrist. She said it appeared the day she was chosen by the moon goddess to bear the royal heirs. Clara's breath caught. What does that mean? I don't know. But it's not coincidence that you, an orphan with no wolf, no pack, and my mother's sacred mark, were the one to break my curse. His grip on her wrist tightened slightly. Who are you, Clara? Where did you really come from? I don't know. The words came out more desperate than she intended. I've never known. They found me in the snow and gave me a name and put me to work. That's my entire history. Dominic studied her for a long moment. Whatever he was searching for, Clara couldn't tell if he found it. Then footsteps thundered overhead. Clara's head snapped up. Heavy boots, multiple sets, moving fast toward the basement stairs. She knew those footsteps, patrol guards responding to a disturbance. They felt the magic, she gasped. When you transformed, the surge. They're coming. Dominic released her wrist and looked around the tiny room. No windows. One door. No weapons, no escape, and he was powerless. Clara's mind raced. If they found him here, a naked stranger in a servant's quarters, claiming to be the dead prince, she'd be executed for harboring an intruder. And Dominic would be dragged before Silas, who would either kill him immediately or find something worse. The footsteps reached the basement level. Voices shouted. Doors slammed as guards began searching room by room. Dominic grabbed her hand. His skin was warm, his grip urgent. You freed me, he said, low and fast. You broke 12 years of imprisonment with a single kiss. I don't know why or how, but I know it was an accident. You're connected to this, to me, somehow. They'll kill us both if they find you here. Then hide me. His golden eyes burned into hers. Help me survive long enough to destroy my brother, and I will give you everything Silas has stolen from you. Pack. Protection. Answers about who you really are and why you carry my mother's mark. The guards were 3 doors away. 2. Clara could hear Beta Marcus's voice barking orders. She had seconds to decide. A lifetime of obedience, of survival through invisibility, of never taking risks, all of it screamed at her to shove this man away and plead ignorance. But Clara had spent 22 years being nothing. Just once, she wanted to matter. The closet, she hissed, shoving him toward the narrow space where she kept her uniforms. Don't move. Don't breathe. Dominic folded himself into the darkness just as the door burst open. If you are enjoying this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 3. The door burst open and Clara's heart stopped. 4 guards poured into her tiny basement room, their massive frames filling the space until the walls seemed to shrink. They were in human form but barely. She could see the wolf in their movements, the predatory way they scanned every corner, the amber glow at the edges of their eyes. Beta Marcus Kane led them. Silas's most loyal enforcer was built like a battering ram, all muscle and menace with a face that looked carved from granite. He'd served the Alpha King since the massacre, had risen through the ranks by being more brutal than anyone else willing to do Silas's dirty work. Clara had watched him break bones for minor infractions. Had seen him drag wolves to the dungeon for questioning and return alone. His cold gaze swept the room and landed on her. We detected magic. His voice was gravel scraping stone. Forbidden magic. Right here in the servants' quarters. He stepped closer, and Clara made herself shrink back against the wall. What did you do, Mutt? Clara let her lip tremble. Let her eyes go wide and frightened. It wasn't hard, she was terrified. But she'd learned years ago that terror could be shaped, directed, used. I didn't mean to, she whispered, making her voice shake. I found something, in the trash from the ball. I thought it was just a candle. A candle. A spelled candle. I didn't know. She ducked her head, playing the stupid, harmless servant they all believed her to be. I lit it in my room, and it made this light, and I got scared and put it out. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know it was magic. One of the guards snorted. The wolfless mutt playing with enchanted objects. Probably couldn't tell magic from a matchstick. Clara kept her eyes down. Kept her shoulders hunched. Every instinct screamed at her not to look at the closet, not to give any indication that anything more than a foolish servant and her mistake existed in this room. Beta Marcus studied her with those flat, predatory eyes. She could feel him weighing her story, testing it for cracks. She wasn't important enough to lie well, that's what he was thinking. She could see it in the slight curl of his lip. The packless orphan didn't have the intelligence or the motivation for real deception. His perception of her was her greatest weapon. Where's the candle now? He demanded. I threw it away. In the incinerator. Clara wrung her hands, a gesture she'd perfected years ago. I was afraid. I didn't want anyone to know I'd touched magic. Please, Beta Marcus, I didn't mean any harm. I'm just stupid. Everyone says so. A long pause. The guards shifted restlessly, clearly wanting action, wanting violence. Beta Marcus was the type to give it to them. But he also couldn't prove she was lying. Stupid is right, he finally said. Too stupid to know that touching forbidden magic is a punishable offense. Too stupid to know that ignorance isn't an excuse in this pack. Clara braced herself. She knew what was coming. Beta Marcus's hand cracked across her face. The blow snapped her head sideways, split her lip against her teeth, sent her stumbling into the wall. Pain exploded through her cheekbone, and she tasted copper flooding her mouth. The guards laughed. One of them made a joke about mutts needing training. Another suggested more permanent corrections. Clara stayed down. Didn't cry out, didn't fight back, didn't look toward the closet where she knew Dominic was watching through the slats. She could feel him there, feel his rage like heat against her skin, feel him fighting every instinct to burst out and defend her. If he moved, they would both die. Let this be a lesson. Beta Marcus grabbed her chin and forced her to meet his eyes. You're nothing, Mutt. You exist because the Alpha King is merciful. Remember that next time you think about touching things above your station. He released her with a shove that sent her sprawling. Then he turned and led his guards out, slamming the door behind them. Clara stayed on the floor, listening to their footsteps fade down the corridor. Up the stairs. Away. Only when silence had held for a full minute did the closet door creak open. Dominic emerged like a storm barely contained. His hands were shaking, not from fear, she realized, but from the effort of staying still. His jaw was clenched so tight she could see the muscles jumping beneath his skin, and his golden eyes blazed with fury. You let them strike you. His voice was barely controlled. You let that animal put his hands on you, and you didn't fight back. Clara pushed herself up slowly, pressing her sleeve to her bleeding lip. Fighting back would have gotten us both killed. I should have. You should have stayed hidden. Which you did. She met his eyes steadily despite the throbbing in her face. I've taken worse than a split lip, Dominic. And you can't help me if you're dead. Something shifted in his expression. The rage didn't fade, but it transformed into something else, something that looked almost like wonder. You protected me, he said quietly. You took a beating to protect a stranger who nearly killed you an hour ago. You're not a stranger. Clara wasn't sure where the words came from. You're the first person who's ever looked at me like I might be worth something. The silence between them stretched, heavy with things neither of them knew how to say. Finally, Dominic moved to her side. His touch was impossibly gentle as he tilted her chin toward the light, examining the damage to her face. This needs cleaning. Do you have supplies? Under the cot. He found her meager first aid kit, stolen supplies, like everything else she owned, and set to work with surprising care. Clara watched him, this man who'd been a king, this wolf who'd been a wooden toy, tending to her wounds like she mattered. We need a plan, she said. Yes. He dabbed antiseptic on her split lip, his brow furrowed in concentration. I need to find the witch. Learn the full terms of the curse and how to break it. Then I can reclaim my power and destroy Silas. I can help. The servants hear everything, no one pays attention to us. I can gather information while you stay hidden. Dominic paused his ministrations. You would do that? After what just happened? I've spent my whole life being invisible. Clara shrugged, then winced as the movement pulled at bruises. Might as well use it for something that matters. They established rules that night. Dominic would stay hidden in her room during the day, the basement was rarely visited, and the other servants avoided Clara's corner. She would work her regular shifts, keeping her ears open, her head down, and her eyes sharp. They would meet each night to share information and plan their next move. It wasn't much of a plan. But it was more than either of them had before. 3 days passed. Then 4. Then a week. Clara fell into a rhythm that felt almost natural, despite the impossibility of it all. She scrubbed floors and polished silver and emptied trash, same as always. But now she listened differently. Watched differently. Every overheard conversation, every glimpse of pack politics, every servant's gossip became potential intelligence. And every night, she returned to Dominic. She smuggled him food from the kitchens, better food than she ate herself, though he tried to argue about that. She brought him clothes taken from the donation bins, items meant for charity that no one would miss. She told him everything she learned, the guard rotations, the pack hierarchy, which wolves were loyal to Silas and which merely feared him. He told her things too. About his family, his mother's laugh, his father's wisdom, the way his little sister used to follow him everywhere. About the years of frozen consciousness, aware of every passing moment, unable to even scream. About the guilt that ate at him when he thought about his family dying while he watched. "I should have known," he said one night, staring at the ceiling while Clara sat on the floor mending a torn uniform. "Silas was always jealous. Always watching me with something cold in his eyes. I thought it was normal sibling rivalry. You were young. And you trusted your family. My trust killed them." Clara set down her sewing. "Silas's betrayal killed them. You don't get to take credit for his evil." He turned his head to look at her, and something flickered in those golden eyes. Something like wonder. "How do you do that?" he asked. "See things so clearly? When you spend your whole life on the outside looking in, you get good at seeing what others miss." The attraction between them built slowly, like pressure gathering before a storm. Clara noticed the way Dominic's gaze followed her around the room. The way his hand lingered when he passed her food. The way his voice softened when he said her name. She noticed because she felt it too. The pull toward him, the warmth that spread through her chest when he was near. She'd never felt anything like it, had never been close enough to anyone to feel anything at all. It terrified her. And it thrilled her. But neither of them acted on it. There was too much at stake, too many unknowns, too much darkness between them and any kind of future. So they planned instead. And waited. And learned. On the 8th night, Clara struck gold. She'd been cleaning outside Alpha Silas's study, a task she usually avoided, but the regular cleaner had fallen ill. The door was slightly ajar, and voices drifted through. "The witch in the hollow needs more payment." Beta Marcus's gravelly voice. "She says the price of keeping the secret buried has gone up." Silas's response was cold. "Seraphina has become greedy in her old age. Remind her what happens to those who try to renegotiate with me. She claims there were complications with the original spell. Things that weren't anticipated." A pause. When Silas spoke again, his voice was dangerously soft. "What kind of complications?" She wouldn't say. Only that the payment must increase or she'll stop maintaining her end of the bargain. Clara heard Silas rise, heard his footsteps pace across the study. "Send her the payment. Double it. And send a warning with it. If she speaks a word of what she knows to anyone, I will personally ensure her death takes weeks." Clara memorized every word. Then she slipped away before anyone could notice her presence. That night, she told Dominic everything. "Seraphina is alive," he breathed. "Still working with Silas. Still keeping secrets. She lives in a place called Thornwood Hollow. 3 days' journey from here." Dominic went still. "Thornwood? Clara paused. "It's my surname. The one the pack gave me because I was found near the Thornwood border." Another coincidence. Another thread connecting her to this nightmare in ways she couldn't understand. But that wasn't the worst discovery of the night. There's something else. Clara reached into her apron and pulled out a rolled canvas. "I found this behind a bookshelf in Silas's study. Hidden." She unrolled the small painting, and Dominic leaned forward to look. A woman stared back at them from the canvas. Dark hair tumbling past her shoulders. Gray eyes with flecks of silver. Sharp cheekbones and a determined jaw. On her inner wrist, clearly visible where her hand rested against her chest, was a crescent moon birthmark with 3 drops. Clara's blood turned to ice. She knew this face. She saw it every time she looked in a mirror. The woman in the painting was older, 30, maybe 35, but the resemblance was unmistakable. Same eyes. Same hair. Same bone structure. Same birthmark in the same location. "Dominic." Her voice came out strangled. "I think the witch who cursed you might be my mother." Dominic's expression shuddered. It happened so fast that Clara almost missed it, the warmth draining from his eyes, the softness hardening into something else. He looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time since that first night, she felt like prey. "If Seraphina is your mother," he said slowly, then your blood carries her magic. Which means. He stepped back from her. Put distance between them where there had been closeness. His jaw tightened, and she watched calculations move behind his golden eyes. You might be the key to breaking my curse completely. Clara's heart clenched. Dominic. Or you might be the trap she left behind to destroy me. The words hit her like Beta Marcus's blow, stealing her breath and leaving her reeling. She searched his face for any trace of the man who'd tended her wounds, who'd listened to her stories, who'd looked at her like she mattered. He was gone. In his place stood a king assessing a threat. You think I'm working with her? Clara's voice cracked. You think this whole time I've been. I think coincidences don't exist. Not like this. He held up a hand when she moved toward him. A woman with Seraphina's mark finds me in the garbage. Her kiss breaks my curse. She has no wolf, no pack, no history, the perfect blank slate. And now we discover she's the witch's daughter. I didn't know. I still don't know anything. I spent my whole life thinking I was no one, and now. Now you're either my salvation or my destruction. Dominic's voice was flat. And I can't tell which. Clara stood frozen in the center of her tiny room, the painting clutched in her trembling hands. She'd spent 8 days learning to trust this man. 8 days letting herself hope that maybe, finally, she'd found someone who saw her as more than nothing. 8 days building something that had just shattered. I would never hurt you, she whispered. Dominic's expression didn't change. Seraphina's daughter might not have a choice. If you are enjoying this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 4. The atmosphere in Clara's tiny room had become a living thing, cold, watchful, waiting. 2 days had passed since the discovery of the painting. 2 days of Dominic tracking her every movement with those golden eyes, studying her like she might transform into something dangerous at any moment. He wasn't cruel. He still spoke to her, still shared information, still worked with her toward their common goal. But the warmth was gone. The softness that had crept into his voice when he said her name, the way he'd leaned toward her during their late-night conversations, all of it had vanished behind walls she couldn't breach. Clara had been invisible her whole life. She'd never realized how much worse it would feel to be seen, but seen as a threat. On the third morning, she'd had enough. Stop it, she said, turning from where she'd been gathering her cleaning supplies. Stop looking at me like I'm going to sprout fangs and attack you. Dominic's expression didn't change. I'm being cautious. You're being ridiculous. Clara dropped the supplies on her cot and faced him fully. I had no idea about my parentage until 3 days ago. I have no magic, don't you think I would have noticed if I could cast spells? I have no memories of any witch, no mysterious training, no secret agenda. The best traps don't know they're traps. Listen to yourself. Clara stepped closer, refusing to back down even when his eyes narrowed. If Seraphina is my mother, she abandoned me. Left me in the snow to be found by wolves who spent 22 years treating me like garbage. Whatever connection I have to that woman, it's not loyalty. Dominic said nothing, but she saw something flicker in his gaze. I kissed a wooden nutcracker because I felt sorry for it, Clara continued, her voice raw. Because I saw something broken and thrown away, and I knew what that felt like. If I were a trap, don't you think I would have known? Don't you think there would have been some grand plan beyond, feel sad about discarded Christmas decoration? A muscle jumped in Dominic's jaw. His walls cracked, just slightly, she could see it in the way his shoulders loosened, the way his hands unclenched at his sides. You have a point, he admitted quietly. I have several points. Would you like me to keep making them, or can we go back to actually working together? The ghost of something that might have been a smile crossed his face. You're not afraid of me at all, are you? I've been afraid my whole life. Of the pack, of the wolves, of being worthless and alone forever. Clara held his gaze. Being afraid of you too would just be exhausting. This time, Dominic did smile. Brief, barely there, but real. All right, he said. An uneasy truce, then. We continue our alliance. We find Seraphina. We get answers, about the curse, about your origins, about everything. And you stop looking at me like I'm about to murder you in your sleep? I'll work on it. It wasn't perfect. The trust they'd been building was fractured now, shot through with cracks that might never fully heal. But it was something. And something was more than Clara had ever had before. She threw herself into investigation with renewed purpose. The Pack archives were housed in a forgotten corner of the mansion's east wing, dusty shelves crammed with records that no one had looked at in years. As a servant, Clara wasn't supposed to be there. But servants cleaned everywhere, and no one questioned a girl with a mop in her hands. She searched for anything related to the night the Varon family died. The official histories were useless, sanitized accounts of a tragic rogue attack, heroic Silas emerging from the ashes to lead his people. But official histories weren't kept in the archives. The archives held the mundane stuff. Patrol logs. Supply requisitions. Guard rotations. The truth lived in the details no one thought to hide. It took her 3 days to find it. The patrol log from the night of the massacre was buried under years of accumulated paperwork. Clara's hands trembled as she pulled it free, scanning the faded handwriting. The official record said rogues attacked at midnight, overwhelming the palace guards. But the patrol log told a different story. At 11:30 p.m., every guard assigned to the palace had been called away. Emergency deployment to the southern border, orders signed by Beta Marcus Cain, authorized by Prince Silas. 30 minutes before the attack, the palace was left completely undefended. And the authorization signature was wrong. Silas had been a prince then, not yet alpha. He shouldn't have had the authority to redeploy royal guards. But someone had accepted his orders anyway. Someone had made sure the palace was vulnerable. Clara photographed the page with her stolen phone, another forbidden possession, and kept searching. She found supply requisitions for wolfsbane in unusual quantities, ordered 2 weeks before the massacre. Transfer documents moving loyal guards to distant posts. A pattern of preparation that painted a damning picture. It wasn't rogues. It never had been. Silas hadn't survived the attack. He'd orchestrated it. And no one had ever looked closely enough to see the evidence he'd left scattered in plain sight. What are you doing in here? Clara's blood froze. Luna Evangeline stood in the archive doorway, her perfect face twisted with contempt. She wore a silk dress that cost more than Clara would earn in a year, and her cold blue eyes swept the room like she was surveying something unclean. I was cleaning, Luna. Clara ducked her head, slipping the photographed documents into her apron pocket. The head housekeeper said the archives needed dusting. The archives. Evangeline stepped closer, her heels clicking against the stone floor. And you thought you'd do some reading while you dusted? No, Luna. I can barely read. I was just. Don't lie to me, mutt. Evangeline's hand shot out and grabbed Clara's chin, forcing her head up. I've watched you these past weeks. Scurrying around, listening at doorways, appearing where you shouldn't be. You're getting above yourself. Clara said nothing. Any response would make it worse. I think you need a reminder of your place. Evangeline's smile was beautiful and terrible. Come with me. She didn't give Clara a choice. Her grip shifted to Clara's arm, claws extending just enough to draw blood, and she dragged Clara through the corridors toward the kitchens. The kitchen staff scattered when they saw the Luna coming. Evangeline paid them no attention. She pulled Clara to the center of the room and shoved her to the floor. Bring me glass, she ordered. From the broken bottles in the recycling. A trembling cook obeyed, scattering shards across the stone floor in front of Clara. Kneel. Evangeline's voice was silk over steel. On the glass. And recite your place until I tell you to stop. Clara looked at the glittering shards. Some were large enough to see through. Others were tiny, almost invisible, the kind that would embed themselves in flesh and stay there. She knelt. The glass bit into her knees immediately, sharp edges slicing through her thin servant's dress like it wasn't there. Clara felt hot blood begin to flow, felt fragments pierce deeper as her weight settled. "I am nothing," she began, the words she'd been forced to memorize as a child. "I exist by the mercy of the pack. I have no worth beyond service. I am grateful for the scraps I receive." Louder. "I am nothing." Clara's voice cracked but held. "I exist by the mercy of the pack." She recited it again. And again. The glass ground deeper with every shift of her weight. Blood pooled beneath her knees, spreading across the kitchen floor in dark rivulets. Evangeline watched with satisfaction, occasionally correcting Clara's posture or demanding she speak more clearly. The kitchen staff averted their eyes. No one intervened. No one ever did. 20 minutes. 30. An hour. Clara's vision blurred with pain. Her voice went hoarse, then ragged, then barely audible. But she didn't stop. Didn't cry. Didn't give Evangeline the satisfaction of breaking. And somewhere deep inside her, beneath the agony and humiliation, something changed. The cold, hard seed of fury that had been planted 8 days ago, when Beta Marcus split her lip and called her mutt, began to grow. It spread through her chest, her stomach, her limbs. It wrapped around her heart and squeezed. She was not nothing. She was not worthless. She was the woman who had freed a king from a 12-year curse. The woman who had discovered the truth about a massacre. The woman with a witch's mark on her wrist and a mother's secrets hidden in her blood. And someday soon, these wolves would learn exactly what she was worth. Enough. Evangeline sounded bored now. "Clean yourself up. You're bleeding on my floor." She swept out without a backward glance. Clara stayed kneeling until the kitchen cleared. Then, slowly, agonizingly, she pulled herself up. Glass fragments remained embedded in her knees, too deep to remove without proper tools. Every step sent lightning bolts of pain up her legs. But she walked. Back to her room. Back to Dominic. Because she had work to do. Dominic was waiting when she arrived. He took one look at her, the blood soaking through her dress, the pallor of her skin, the way she moved like every step cost her something precious, and his expression went murderous. What happened? He was at her side in an instant, hands hovering like he wanted to help but didn't know how. "Clara, what did they do?" "Luna Evangeline." "Glass." Clara lowered herself onto her cot, biting back a scream as her knees made contact. "It's not important." "The hell it isn't. It's not important right now." She looked up at him with eyes that had changed somehow, harder, colder, more determined. "I found something. In the archives. Proof that Silas orchestrated the massacre. The guards were called away on his orders 30 minutes before the attack." Dominic went still. "You found evidence?" "Photographs. Hidden in my pocket." Clara began the agonizing process of removing glass from her knees, working by feel since she couldn't bend far enough to see. "But that's not all. While I was gone, did you find anything?" He hesitated. Then he reached behind him and produced an old leather journal, its pages yellowed with age. "This was hidden in your wall. Tucked into a gap behind the closet boards." He held it carefully, like it might bite. "It's written in code, mostly. But I recognize some of the symbols. My mother used them, they're from her magical texts." Clara's hands stopped their work. "What does it say?" "I've only decoded portions." "But Clara." He sat beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him. "This journal belonged to Seraphina Bloodmoon. Your mother." Her mother. The word felt foreign, impossible. Clara had no mother. She'd never had a mother. "What did you find?" she whispered. Dominic opened the journal to a marked page. "She wasn't always dark. According to this, Seraphina was my mother's closest friend. Her magical advisor. They grew up together, trusted each other completely. Then why did she curse you? I don't know yet. But there's more. He turns several pages. She fell in love with someone. Someone forbidden, the journal doesn't say who, but she refers to him as, the one I cannot have, the one who chose duty over desire. Clara thought of her own face in the painting. Of the crescent birthmark they shared. And me? Dominic's jaw tightened. She writes about hiding a daughter. Placing her in the safest place, with the pack that would never think to look for a witch's child among servants. She knew Blackmoor Pack would treat her daughter as nothing, but she also knew no one would ever suspect. The basement room. The servant's life. The invisibility that had been Clara's prison for 22 years. It hadn't been bad luck. It had been planned. There's something else. Dominic turned to the final decoded passage, and Clara saw his hands weren't quite steady. The curse she placed on me, it wasn't supposed to be permanent. There was meant to be a cure, a way to break it fully. But someone changed the terms. Silas? He changed the terms and bound my daughter's blood to the lock. Dominic read the words aloud, his voice hollow. That's what she wrote. Silas altered the curse after it was cast. He made sure it couldn't be broken without. He stopped. Looked at Clara with something like horror. Without what? She demanded. Dominic handed her the journal, pointing to a passage near the bottom of the page. Clara's eyes found the words, and her blood turned to ice. The curse can only be fully broken by the willing blood sacrifice of my bloodline. My daughter must choose to die for the Alpha King, and only love, true love, will make that choice possible. Silas believes he has ensured it will never happen. He does not know my daughter's heart. Clara read it again. And again. The words didn't change. Her death. Her willing death. That was the key. She looked up at Dominic, and the devastation on his face confirmed everything. Silas had your mother bind your life force to my curse. His voice cracked on the words. If I want my full power back, my wolf, my throne, my vengeance, you have to die for me. He released the journal like it was poison, letting it fall to the floor between them. And the curse is designed so that I will make you want to. If you are enjoying this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 5. Clara sat on her cot, the journal open in her lap, and felt nothing. That was strange, wasn't it? She should feel something. Horror. Despair. Rage. Instead, there was just a hollow space where her emotions should be, echoing with the truth she'd just learned. Her death was the price. Her willing death. The only thing that could restore Dominic's power, avenge his family, save him from 12 years of injustice. She'd spent her entire life being treated as worthless. Now she learned her only value was as a sacrifice. So I'm not your mate. Her voice came out flat, detached, like she was discussing the weather. I'm not your ally. I'm your curse's kill switch. Dominic flinched like she'd struck him. Clara. That's what the curse makes me, right? A key designed to be turned. A lock waiting to be opened. She looked up at him, and some distant part of her noted the anguish on his face. My mother made me to die for you. And Silas made sure it would never happen. You're more than that. Dominic's voice cracked. You have to be more than that. Do I? Tell me, Dominic. She stood, ignoring the screaming pain in her knees. All those feelings you've been developing. The protectiveness. The way you look at me when you think I don't notice. Are those real? Or is that the curse manipulating you into making me love you enough to choose death? He had no answer. She watched the question tear through him, watched him search himself for certainty and find only doubt. I don't know, he finally admitted. I don't know what's real anymore. The words hung between them like a blade. Clara should have felt hurt. Some part of her did, a small, fragile thing buried under layers of survival instinct. But mostly she felt tired. So deeply, impossibly tired of being a pawn in games she didn't choose to play. I need air, Dominic said abruptly. I need to think. He moved toward the door, and Clara didn't stop him. Let him go. Let him spiral in his own darkness while she sat in hers. But he paused at the threshold, one hand on the frame. We should stop meeting. He didn't turn around. I'll find another way to break the curse. There has to be another way. I won't be the monster who seduces a woman to her death. Dominic. I mean it, Clara. Now he did turn, and his golden eyes were hollow. Whatever is happening between us, whatever I feel, whatever you feel, we can't trust it. The curse designed this. Designed us. And I refuse to play its game. He was gone before she could respond. Clara stood alone in her tiny room, surrounded by blood-stained glass and impossible revelations, and let the silence swallow her whole. 3 days passed. Then 4. Dominic kept his word. He found somewhere else to hide. Clara didn't know where, didn't ask. Their alliance fractured into something cold and transactional, notes left in predetermined locations, information exchanged without contact, two people orbiting the same goal while refusing to occupy the same space. It hurt more than Clara expected. She told herself it was better this way. Cleaner. If Dominic wasn't there, she couldn't be tempted by whatever the curse wanted her to feel. She could think clearly, plan strategically, maintain the emotional distance that had kept her alive for 22 years. But at night, alone in her basement room with only the shadows for company, she missed him. Missed his voice, his intensity, the way he'd looked at her like she mattered. Even if it had all been a lie. On the 5th day, she left a note at their drop point, behind a loose stone in the garden wall. You don't get to make this choice for me. If my blood is the price of your freedom, shouldn't I be the one to decide whether to pay it? His response came the next morning, scrawled in handwriting that spoke of barely controlled emotion. You would choose to die? For a man you've known weeks? Clara wrote back, would choose to have choices. Something I've never had. No response came. But Clara thought she understood. Dominic was trying to protect her, from the curse, from himself, from the terrible purpose she'd been born for. He saw walking away as noble, as self-sacrifice of his own kind. He didn't understand that taking her choice away was just another form of control. Another cage built by someone who thought they knew better. Clara was done being caged. She wasn't the only one watching, thinking, planning. Alpha Silas had grown paranoid. Clara noticed the change in the mansion's atmosphere, the way guards patrolled more frequently, the hushed conversations that stopped when servants approached, the tension that crackled through every interaction. Something had disturbed the Alpha King's peace, and he was hunting for the source. Beta Marcus appeared in the servants' quarters 3 times in 1 week. He never explained his presence, never made accusations. Just watched. Listened. Let his attention linger on faces like he was cataloging threats. His attention lingered longest on Clara. You. He stopped her in the corridor on the 3rd visit, blocking her path with his massive frame. Thornwood. Clara kept her eyes down. Yes, Beta Marcus. You've served this pack a long time. All my life. And in all that time, you've never caused trouble. Never stepped out of line. Never done anything to draw attention. He circled her slowly, and Clara felt his gaze like crawling insects on her skin. I find that interesting. I'm not interesting, Beta. I'm just a servant. That's what you want me to think. He stopped in front of her, close enough that she could smell the leather and blood that always clung to him. But I've been watching you, little mutt. There's something behind those eyes. Something that survives when it shouldn't. Clara said nothing. Survival meant silence. The Alpha King has concerns, Marcus continued. Strange magic on Christmas Eve. His witch sending frantic messages. Servants whispering secrets they shouldn't know. He leaned closer. If I find out you're involved in anything at all, I will make what the Luna did to your knees look like a gentle massage. He let the threat hang, then stepped aside to let her pass. Clara walked away on steady legs, her heart pounding against her ribs. She didn't look back. Didn't let fear show in her movements. But she felt his eyes on her all the way down the corridor. Watching. Waiting. Predator patience. That night, Clara snuck out. Not to meet Dominic, he'd made his position clear. But she wasn't done investigating, and there was someone she needed to find. Someone who might have answers that the archives didn't hold. Nell lived in a cottage at the edge of the pack grounds, as close to exile as you could get without actually leaving. She'd served in the royal palace before the massacre, one of the few survivors of that night, though survival had cost her sanity. The pack kept her alive out of something resembling mercy. They let her tend her garden and talk to people who weren't there and occasionally wander into the forest to have conversations with trees. Harmless, they said. Just a broken old woman. Clara knocked on her door at midnight. It took 3 tries before Nell answered, her white hair wild around a face that had seen too much. Her eyes focused and unfocused like a camera struggling to find its subject. Who's there? Who's there in the dark? Clara. Clara Thornwood. I work in the main house. Thornwood. Nell's lips moved around the name, tasting it. Thornwood Hollow. That's where she lived. The witch. Before everything burned. Clara's pulse quickened. Can I come in? I need to ask you about the palace. About the night of the massacre. Something flickered in Nell's wandering gaze. Lucidity, brief and bright. You want to know about the dead prince, she said. The one they don't talk about. The one who was supposed to be king. Yes. Nell stepped back and let her enter. The cottage was chaos, herbs hanging from every surface, books stacked in precarious towers, drawings pinned to walls in no discernible pattern. Nell moved through it all like a ghost in her own haunting, settling into a chair by the cold fireplace. The young prince, she murmured. Dominic. Beautiful boy. Kind heart. His wolf was white, did you know that? White as snow. Hadn't been a white wolf in the royal line for 3 generations. Tell me about the night he died. Died. Nell laughed, a broken sound. Did he die? I wonder sometimes. Bodies burn, but magic lingers. The witch was clever. Too clever for her own good. Clara leaned forward. What do you mean? He had a mate. Nell's eyes found Clara's, suddenly sharp. Did you know that? His wolf recognized her the night before he died. The night before everything burned. But she was just a servant girl. Just a baby. Wrong timing, wrong life, wrong everything. Clara's breath caught. A baby? He was going to reject the crown for her. Can you imagine? An alpha king's firstborn, ready to throw away everything for a mate he couldn't even have yet. Said he'd wait. Said he'd protect her until she was grown, then claim her properly. Nell shook her head. That's why his brother moved when he did. Couldn't let the crown pass to some servant's get. Who was the mate? Clara's voice was barely a whisper. Who was the servant girl? Nell's eyes cleared. For one terrible moment, the madness receded, and Clara saw the woman she must have been before, sharp, knowing, weighted with secrets too heavy to carry. The witch's daughter, Nell said. His wolf chose the witch's daughter. Why do you think Serafina agreed to curse him? Silas threatened to kill you if she didn't. The world tilted. Clara gripped the arm of her chair, fighting vertigo. What did you say? You. Nell reached out and touched Clara's wrist, her birthmark. The moon's chosen. Marked for the white wolf before you were even born. Serafina knew. She saw it in the stars, in the blood, in the way the moonlight fell on your cradle. Her daughter was destined to be queen. That's impossible. Silas found out. Don't ask me how, he's always had spies, always had ways of learning things he shouldn't. He came to Serafina with a choice: curse the prince into something harmless, or watch her daughter die. Clara's mind raced. Serafina hadn't cursed Dominic out of darkness or greed. She'd done it to save Clara's life. A mother's desperate bargain, her friend's son for her own child. But she built something into the curse, Nell continued, her voice dreamy now, sliding back toward madness. A failsafe. The curse couldn't be broken without willing sacrifice, emphasis on willing. Silas thought he was being clever, binding your blood to the lock. He assumed force would never work, and love would never happen. Two people who'd never meet, never know, never choose each other. He was wrong. He underestimated your mother. Nell smiled, distant and sad. She bet everything on love. On the mate bond being real, being strong, being enough. If you and the prince ever found each other, the bond would prove itself. You'd have the choice she never had. The curse wasn't designed to manufacture love. It was designed to test whether love could survive the truth. Clara stood on unsteady legs. Thank you, Nell. Run, little moon. Nell's eyes had gone vacant again, lost to whatever ghosts lived in her head. Run fast. The wolves are hunting. Clara ran. Not from wolves, not yet, but toward the truth. Toward Dominic. Toward whatever came next. She needed to tell him what she'd learned. They were mates, real mates, chosen by fate before either of them had any say in the matter. What they felt wasn't the curse's manipulation. It was real. But when she reached her basement room, she knew immediately that something was wrong. The door hung open. Inside, destruction. Her cot had been overturned, mattress slashed. Her meager possessions lay scattered across the floor. The closet doors hung off their hinges, and the wall where Dominic had hidden, where his scent must have lingered despite their precautions, was gouged with claw marks. They'd searched her room. They'd found evidence of him. Clara's blood turned to ice as she saw the note pinned to her wall with a single claw, the handwriting unmistakably Beta Marcus's. Run, little mutt. The Alpha King wants to know who you've been hiding. You have until dawn. If you are enjoying this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 6, The Hollow Truth. Clara ran. Branches tore at her face, her arms, her thin servant's dress. Snow soaked through her worn shoes, numbing her feet until she couldn't feel them anymore. She had no plan, no destination, no thought beyond the primal need to flee, to put distance between herself and the wolves who would tear her apart for answers she didn't have. Beta Marcus's words echoed in her skull. You have until dawn. Dawn was hours away, but the pack's wolves were faster, stronger, better suited to this frozen wilderness than a packless girl who'd never run farther than the mansion's gardens. She was going to die out here. Alone in the cold, just like she'd been found 22 years ago. At least there was symmetry in that. She was halfway to the border, she thought, she hoped, when a figure dropped from the trees directly in her path. Clara screamed, stumbling backward, hands raised in useless defense. But the moonlight caught golden eyes, scarred skin, a face she'd been dreaming about for weeks. Dominic? He caught her before she could fall, his hands warm against her frozen arms. You need to move quieter. I could hear you crashing through the undergrowth from half a mile away. What are you? Clara's mind struggled to catch up. You said you were leaving. You said we shouldn't see each other. I lied. He released her but stayed close, scanning the darkness around them with predator alertness. I never left. I've been watching from a distance, making sure you were safe. You were watching me? My wolf wouldn't let me leave you unprotected. Even caged, even powerless, he's been screaming for you since the moment I touched you. Dominic's jaw tightened. When I saw Marcus's men mobilizing toward the servants' quarters, I knew something had gone wrong. I intercepted you as quickly as I could. Clara stared at him, this impossible man who kept saving her when he had every reason to let her burn. You came back. I never left. Something softened in his expression, just briefly, just enough. I just needed you to be free of me. Clearly, fate disagrees. In the distance, a wolf howled. Others answered, spreading through the forest like a net drawing tight. We need to move. Dominic grabbed her hand. Can you keep running? Do I have a choice? No. His grip tightened. But you can lean on me when you need to. They ran together into the darkness. The journey to Thornwood Hollow should have taken 3 days. They made it in 2, driven by desperation and the constant threat of pursuit. Dominic knew the forest in ways Clara didn't: hidden paths, stream crossings, dense thickets where they could hide while patrols passed within feet of their position. But without his wolf strength, he was as vulnerable as she was. They both stumbled on frozen roots, both shivered through nights spent huddled together for warmth, both pushed past exhaustion into something beyond it. It was during those nights, pressed close beneath whatever shelter they could find, that they finally talked. Really talked. Tell me about your life, Dominic said on the first night, his voice low to avoid carrying. Not the facts, you've told me those. Tell me what it felt like. Clara considered the question, watching her breath mist in the cold air. Lonely, she finally said. Invisible. Like I was watching my own life through a window, never quite part of it. The pack never showed you any kindness? There was a cook, once. She used to sneak me extra food when no one was looking. She died when I was 12, winter fever. After that. Clara shrugged. I learned not to need kindness. It was easier that way. Dominic was quiet for a long moment. What about the beatings? The glass? That was normal. Every servant knows their place, and part of knowing is being reminded. She felt him tense beside her. Don't be angry on my behalf. It doesn't help. I'm not angry for you. I'm angry with myself. His voice was rough. I should have protected you. I should have been king. If I had been what I was supposed to be, you would have been. Don't. Clara turned to face him, close enough in the darkness to see the gold flicker in his eyes. You didn't fail. You were betrayed. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. And the fact that you can't see it tells me Silas did more damage than just locking away your wolf. The words landed somewhere deep in Dominic's expression. He looked away first. On the second night, it was his turn. My mother used to sing, he said, voice distant with memory. Old songs, lullabies that had been passed down through the royal line for generations. She had a terrible voice, couldn't hold a tune to save her life, but she sang anyway. Every night before bed. Clara listened without interrupting. My father was the strongest wolf I've ever known, but he cried at her funeral. Stood over her body and wept like a child. Dominic's hands clenched in his lap. Except there was no funeral. Just fire. Just ashes. Just Silas standing in the ruins, playing the grieving survivor. And your sister? Sarah. The name came out broken. She was 14. Brilliant. Fierce. She wanted to be a healer, said she was tired of wolves only knowing how to hurt things. She wanted to learn to fix them instead. She sounds wonderful. She was terrified, at the end. I could see it through my wooden eyes. She saw Silas coming, and she knew. She knew what he was going to do. She called him brother and begged him to stop. Clara reached for his hand without thinking. He gripped back hard enough to hurt. He kept me in his study, Dominic continued. Did you know that? After everything, he put me on his desk like a trophy. I watched him rule for 12 years. Watched him sign orders and hold meetings and entertain women. He would talk to me sometimes. Tell me about his plans, his conquests, the ways he was expanding our territory. He thought it was funny. Gods. He called me his lucky charm. Said the Nutcracker his brother used to play with as a child reminded him of simpler times. Dominic's laugh was hollow. He forgot I used to play with it because Sarah gave it to me. Because our mother put it in our nursery. He forgot it meant something before it meant me. Clara squeezed his hand tighter. We're going to destroy him. Yes. Dominic looked at her, and something burned in those golden eyes. We are. On the morning of the third day, earlier than planned, earlier than expected, Clara finally told him what Nell had revealed. They were resting in a shallow cave, sharing the last of their stolen food, when she spoke. I'm your mate. Dominic went still. I met an old woman who survived the massacre. She remembered you. Remembered the night before everything burned, when your wolf recognized his match. Clara forced herself to meet his eyes. You were going to give up the crown for me. For a baby you'd never be able to claim for years. That's why Silas moved when he did. Dominic said nothing for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful. I suspected. What? My wolf has been screaming for you since the moment I touched your throat. Even caged, even powerless, he knows. Dominic looked down at his hands. I didn't want to tell you. I didn't want the bond to influence your choices. Does it matter? Clara asked. Knowing I'm your mate? Does it matter to you? He turned the question back. Knowing the bond might be why you feel anything for me at all? Clara considered the question, really considered it. The attraction she felt for Dominic. The trust she'd built despite every reason not to. The way her heart raced when he was near, the way his absence had ached like a physical wound. Was any of it real? Or was it all just fate pulling strings? I don't know, she admitted. I've never felt anything like this before. I don't have anything to compare it to. A long silence stretched between them. Then Dominic spoke, his voice soft. I would rather love you because of fate than hurt you because of choice. Clara's breath caught. I spent 12 years with nothing, he continued. No touch, no voice, no agency. Just endless watching, endless awareness, endless nothing. And in all that time, I never stopped believing that something would change. That somehow, someday, I would be free. He reached out and touched her face, gently, reverently. You kissed a broken toy because you saw something worth saving. That's not fate. That's not the mate bond. That's just who you are. And whoever I love, whether because of destiny or despite it, that woman is worth dying for. Clara leaned into his touch, and for one moment, there was no curse. No pursuit. No impossible choice waiting at the end of their road. Just two broken people, finally seeing each other clearly. Thornwood Hollow lived up to its name. They reached the witch's territory at sunset on the second day, and Clara knew immediately that something was wrong with this place. The trees grew twisted here, branches reaching toward the ground instead of the sky. Shadows pooled in ways that didn't match the fading light. The air tasted of iron and old magic. Can you feel that? She whispered. Dark magic. Dominic's expression was grim. The kind my family outlawed generations ago. Serafina has been practicing for a long time. At the center of the twisted forest stood a cottage that radiated power like heat from a forge. Symbols covered every surface, painted on walls, carved into posts, buried in the ground around the foundation. The door opened before they could knock. A woman stood in the threshold. She was ancient, far older than Clara had expected from the painting, her skin paper thin and mapped with wrinkles, her hair pure white, her body bent by years of carrying magic too heavy for human frames. But her eyes were Clara's eyes. Gray with flecks of silver. Watchful. Wounded. Serafina looked at her daughter and began to weep. You came, she whispered. After all this time, you finally came. You know who I am? I have watched you since the day I left you in the snow. Scrying spells, hidden familiars, years of seeing you grow into someone stronger than I ever was. Serafina stepped back, gesturing them inside. I knew this day would come. I just hoped. I hoped it wouldn't. The cottage interior was cluttered with the tools of magic, herbs, crystals, books bound in leather that looked disturbingly organic. Clara and Dominic entered warily, neither quite willing to lower their guard. You cursed me. Dominic's voice was ice. Yes. Serafina didn't deny it, didn't excuse it. And I have paid for that curse every day since. You helped Silas murder my family. No. The word cracked like a whip. I cursed you. That was my crime. But the murders, the fire, the slaughter, the destruction of everything good, that was Silas alone. He promised me no one would die. He lied. Why should I believe you? Because I'm going to tell you everything. Serafina sank into a chair, her ancient body trembling. And when you hear it, you'll understand why I did what I did. Even if you can never forgive me. Clara stepped forward. Tell us. And Serafina did. I loved your father, she said to Clara. King Varen. We met when I was young, before I became what I am now. Our affair was brief, a few months of stolen moments, secret meetings, the kind of passion that burns too bright to last. When duty called him back to his responsibilities, I let him go. I knew a witch could never be queen. She paused, gathering herself. When I discovered I was pregnant, I hid it. A witch's bastard with royal blood would have been killed, or worse, used. So I gave birth in secret and placed you with the pack that would never think to look for the king's child among servants. Blackmoor Pack, Clara said. They were cruel, but they were safe. Or so I thought. Serafina's voice hardened. Then Silas discovered everything. Not just the affair, but the mate bond. He had spies in my coven, spies who reported that the young prince's wolf had recognized his match. An infant servant girl with a witch's mark. The king's bastard daughter. He blackmailed you, Dominic said. He gave me a choice. Curse you into helplessness, bind Clara's blood to the lock, and he would let her live. Refuse, and he would kill her before sunrise. Serafina looked at Clara with ancient, anguished eyes. What mother wouldn't choose her child? Clara's throat tightened. You sacrificed him for me. I thought you would be safe. I thought you would never meet him, never know, never have to choose. The curse was supposed to ensure it, two people bound by fate but separated by magic. Silas was supposed to rule uncontested while you lived out your life in invisible safety. But that's not how it worked, Dominic said. Clara found me. She broke the curse. Partially broke it. Serafina's voice dropped. Because Silas changed the terms after I cast the spell. He bound additional conditions, conditions I didn't know about until years later. What conditions? The witch closed her eyes. The willing blood sacrifice must be given at the moment of mate bond completion. Clara must accept you as her mate, consummate the bond, and then die. All willingly. If she dies without completing the bond, you stay cursed. If she completes the bond and refuses to die, you stay cursed. If she's killed unwillingly. The curse transfers, Dominic finished. I die instead. Silas designed it to be unbreakable. He never imagined Clara would be brave enough or love deeply enough to make the choice. Serafina opened her eyes, and tears streamed down her weathered face. I built in the failsafe, the requirement that her sacrifice be willing, because I wanted her to have the choice I never had. But I never wanted her to need it. Silence fell over the cottage, heavy with impossible truth. Clara processed the information with the same eerie calm she'd felt before. Death during consummation. The ultimate intimacy transformed into ultimate sacrifice. Silas had turned her body into a weapon against the man she was made to love. There's no other way, she asked. None that I've found in 12 years of searching. Serafina reached for Clara's hand, her daughter's hand, touching for the first time since Clara was an infant. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for all of it. Before Clara could respond, Dominic went rigid. Something's coming, he said. Something. The window exploded inward. Wolves poured through every entrance, massive, savage, eyes blazing with killing intent. Dozens of them, flooding the small cottage, surrounding them before they could move. And at their head, stepping through the shattered door, stood a wolf larger than all the others. Black as midnight, eyes like frozen amber. He shifted to human, and Silas smiled at the reunion. Brother. His voice was silk over venom. You look well for a dead man. And Clara, little Clara, all grown up. Your mother and I have so much to discuss about broken bargains. He gestured to his wolves, casual as ordering drinks at dinner. Kill the witch. Bring me the girl. My brother. His smile widened. I'll handle personally. Chapter 7, The Blood Price. Battle erupted like a storm breaking. Seraphina moved first, her ancient body suddenly fluid, powerful, alive with magic she'd been hoarding for 12 years. Dark fire exploded from her hands, catching the first wave of wolves mid-leap. They screamed as the flames consumed them, twisted into ash before they hit the ground. Run, she screamed, already gathering another spell. Both of you. I'll hold them. Clara couldn't move. The wolves kept coming, pouring through windows, crashing through walls, an endless tide of fur and fangs. Her mother stood at the center of it all, terrible and magnificent, shadows writhing around her like living things. Clara. Dominic grabbed her arm. We have to go. I can't leave her. She's giving us a chance. She's my mother. Seraphina turned, and for one moment her eyes met Clara's across the chaos. There was no fear in them. No regret. Just fierce, desperate love. I stole 12 years from you, Alpha King, she called to Dominic, her voice cutting through the howls and flames. Let me buy you a few more minutes. Take my daughter and go. A wolf lunged for her throat. Seraphina's magic caught it midair, tore it apart with a gesture. But more were coming. Always more. Dominic pulled Clara toward the back of the cottage, toward a door she hadn't noticed before. She wants you to live. Honor that. I can't. You can. You have to. His grip tightened. Your mother is choosing this. Don't take that choice away from her. Clara looked back one last time. Seraphina stood alone against Silas's army, fire in her hands and fury in her eyes. She was burning through power faster than any human should survive, and she didn't care. Every spell was a goodbye. Every death she dealt was a love letter written in blood and shadow. She was magnificent. She was dying. Silas reached her before Clara could scream a warning. One moment he was in his wolf form, massive and black and unstoppable. The next he was human, his claws buried in Seraphina's chest, his other hand wrapped around her throat. 12 years, he snarled. 12 years you've been hiding from me. Did you really think I wouldn't find out about your failsafe? About your precious daughter and her precious choice? Seraphina's lips moved. Blood bubbled from her mouth, but she smiled, actually smiled, as Silas's claws found her throat. You forgot, she whispered. Witches always have one last spell. Golden light exploded from her dying body. Not at Silas. Not at the wolves. At Clara. The magic slammed into Clara's chest like a fist, drove the air from her lungs, sent her crashing backward into Dominic. She heard herself screaming but couldn't feel her mouth moving. Everything was light, golden, blazing, infinite light, filling her up, remaking her, transforming her from the inside out. My gift, Seraphina's voice echoed in Clara's mind, growing fainter with each word. My power. My choice. It's yours now, daughter. Choose well. Then silence. When Clara opened her eyes, the world had changed. Colors were brighter. Sounds were sharper. She could feel the magic around her, in the air, in the earth, in the dying flames that still flickered throughout the cottage. She could feel Dominic's heartbeat without touching him, feel the wolf's hunger and fear, feel Silas's shock like a physical thing. Her birthmark blazed on her wrist. Not just glowing, burning. Silver fire that matched the light now pouring from her eyes. She was not a werewolf. She was something older. Something her mother had spent 12 years preparing her to become. A moon witch, half wolf bloodline through her father's connection to the Varens, half witch through her mother's sacrifice. And she was powerful. Clara? Dominic's voice was distant, awed. What? Silas recovered first. Kill her. Kill them both. Wolves surged forward. Clara raised her hand. The magic came without thought, without effort, a blast of pure force that erupted from her palm and slammed into the oncoming wolves like a wall. They flew backward, crashing through what remained of the cottage walls, scattering across the twisted forest. Silas stumbled, knocked off his feet by the shockwave. His golden eyes found Clara's silver ones, and for the first time since she'd known him, the Alpha King looked afraid. Run, Clara said to Dominic. The word came out layered, resonant, not just her voice but something deeper, something ancient. She didn't wait for his response. She grabbed his hand, and her magic carried them both, faster than human legs, faster than wolf paws, faster than anything natural. The world blurred around them as Clara's power propelled them through the forest, away from the carnage, away from her mother's body, away from everything. Behind them, Silas's howl of rage echoed through the trees. They ran until dawn broke over the mountains. Clara's magic led them to a cave system hidden in the peaks, ancient, warded, humming with protective enchantments that predated even Seraphina's birth. The sanctuary her mother must have prepared, just in case. Just in hope. Inside, the cave opened into a chamber lit by crystals that glowed with soft blue light. Furs lined the floor. Supplies were stacked against the walls, food, water, blankets. Everything two people would need to survive while the world hunted them. Seraphina had planned for this. Had hoped Clara would find her way here someday. Had known she wouldn't be alive to see it. The realization hit Clara like a physical blow. Her legs buckled, and she collapsed onto the furs, her new magic flickering and fading as the adrenaline drained away. Clara. Dominic was there immediately, pulling her against his chest, holding her as the first sob tore free. I've got you. I've got you. She cried. For the mother she'd never known. For the mother she'd just watched die. For the sacrifice Seraphina had made 22 years ago, trading her friend's son for her daughter's life, and the sacrifice she'd made today, trading her life for Clara's power. For the terrible truth that Clara's blood was still the only thing that could save the man holding her, and that saving him meant dying. She cried until there was nothing left. Until her throat was raw and her eyes were swollen and her body felt hollow, emptied of everything except grief. Dominic held her through all of it. He didn't speak, didn't offer false comfort. Just held her and let her break. When the tears finally stopped, Clara lay in his arms and stared at the crystal-lit ceiling. She loved me, she whispered. She gave up everything to protect me, and I never even knew she existed. She loved you enough to let you hate her. Dominic's voice was soft. That's the hardest kind of love there is. How do you know? Because I tried to do the same thing. He shifted, tilting her face up to meet his eyes. I walked away because I thought it would protect you. I was wrong. But I understand why she made the choices she did. Clara touched his face, this broken king who kept trying to save her from himself. What do we do now? We find another way. His jaw tightened with determination. I don't need my full power. I don't need to be Alpha King. I just need you. Alive. Dominic. I mean it, Clara. The curse can stay. The throne can rot. I will not let you die for me. She should have agreed. Should have accepted his protection, let him carry this burden like he so desperately wanted to. Instead, she sat up, her silver eyes meeting his gold. Your brother murdered your family. He's enslaved 12 packs. He's tortured and killed and destroyed everything good in his path for 12 years. Clara's voice was steady now, stronger than she'd ever heard it. He'll keep hurting people until someone stops him. And the only person who can stop him is you, at full power. Not at the cost of your life. It's my life. Clara took his face in her hands. My choice. That's what my mother gave me. The right to decide what I'm willing to sacrifice and what I'm not. Clara. I'm not saying I'm ready to die. Her thumb traced his cheekbone, gentler now. I'm saying I refuse to let fear make this choice for me. Whatever happens next, it happens because I chose it. Not because Silas forced it. Not because fate demanded it. Because I looked at my options and picked the one I could live with. Dominic's eyes searched hers. Looking for doubt, for fear, for any sign she was being coerced by the curse or the bond or the impossible pressure of their situation. He found only Clara. What do you want? He asked quietly. Clara didn't hesitate. I want to complete the mate bond. Clara. Not because of the curse. Not because of fate. Not because I think I have to. She moved closer, eliminating the distance between them. Because I love you. The broken king who looked at me like I mattered. The cursed man who tried to protect me from himself. The person who held me while I cried and didn't ask for anything in return. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you feel guilty for things that weren't your fault. I know you tried to give up your vengeance rather than see me hurt. I know you've spent 12 years watching your brother destroy everything you loved, and instead of becoming a monster, you became someone who repairs Nutcracker's feelings. A startled laugh escaped him. I didn't repair the Nutcracker. You did. And you let me. You let a servant girl treat you with kindness, even though you were a king. You accepted comfort from someone everyone else considered worthless. Clara's eyes burned silver. That's who you are. That's who I love. Dominic was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. If we complete the bond, the curse activates. The sacrifice becomes required. I know. You would be tied to my life force. Killing you becomes the only way to fully restore my power. I know. How can you be so calm about this? Clara smiled, a real smile, the first one in what felt like forever. I'm not calm. I'm terrified. But I've spent my whole life being afraid, and it never protected me from anything. At least this way, I'm afraid of something I chose. She leaned forward and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first. Questioning. Then Dominic's arms wrapped around her, and gentle became urgent, questioning became certain. I don't know if I'm brave enough to die for you, Clara whispered against his mouth. But I know I want to live for you. Even if it's just for tonight. Dominic pulled back just enough to look at her. His golden eyes were bright with emotion, love and fear and desperate hope all tangled together. If we do this, he said, there's no going back. I know. I could lose you. Or you could have me. Really have me. Even if it's just for a little while. She kissed him again, and this time he didn't hold back. They completed the mate bond in a cave lit by crystals, surrounded by the protections a dead witch had built, with an army hunting for them in the mountains below. It was tender and desperate and heartbreaking, two people clinging to each other because they knew what came next, what always came next. Clara felt the bond snap into place like a key turning in a lock. Felt Dominic's soul brush against hers, felt his wolf howl with recognition even through its cage. They were connected now. Truly connected. Whatever happened next, that bond would never break. Afterward, they lay tangled together on the furs, and Clara waited to feel the curse's pull. It came. A cold pressure in her chest, like hooks sinking into her heart. The curse recognizing that its conditions had been met, preparing to collect its price. Her blood, willingly given. Her life, traded for Dominic's power. But something else came with it. Her magic, Seraphina's magic, rose to meet the curse. Silver fire blazed through Clara's veins, pushing back against the cold, fighting for every inch of territory in her body. The curse wanted blood. But Clara was more than blood now. She was a vessel. A conduit. A moon witch carrying 12 years of hoarded power. And vessels could be emptied differently. Clara lay very still, feeling the battle rage inside her. The curse demanded sacrifice. The magic offered an alternative. Not her life, her power. Everything Serafina had given her, everything that made her more than a helpless human. She could save Dominic. Break the curse completely. Restore his wolf, his strength, his right to vengeance. But she would be powerless again. Forever. The magic that protected her, that made her something more than nothing, would be gone. She would be Clara Thornwood again. The packless mutt. The servant girl. The broken thing nobody wanted. The choice was hers. Clara looked at Dominic sleeping beside her, his scarred body finally relaxed, his face peaceful in a way she'd never seen it. Even in sleep, his hand rested on her hip, maintaining contact, unwilling to let her go. He would never accept this. If she told him, he would refuse. He would choose his curse over her sacrifice, his prison over her freedom, his brother's victory over her powerlessness. He would take her choice away because he loved her. And Clara couldn't let him. She slipped out of his arms carefully, holding her breath when he stirred. He didn't wake. The bond they'd just completed sang in her chest, protesting the distance, begging her to stay. She ignored it. She found a scrap of parchment in the supplies Serafina had left. Found a charred stick that would serve as a writing instrument. I found another way. I'm sorry I didn't tell you, you would have stopped me. I love you. Now go be the king they need. She left the note where he would find it. Then she walked out of the cave, into the gray morning light, and let her magic blaze silver around her like a beacon. Silas would see it. Silas would come. And when he did, Clara would give him exactly what he'd been hunting for. Her power. Her sacrifice. Her choice. She walked toward the approaching army with her hands raised and her magic blazing, ready to end this once and for all. Chapter 8. Dominic woke to cold furs and silence. His hand reached for Clara before his eyes opened, an instinct, a need, the mate bond demanding contact with its other half. His fingers found nothing but empty space. He sat up, heart already pounding, and saw the note. The words blurred as he read them. Then sharpened. Then burned themselves into his brain with the force of a brand. I found another way. I'm sorry I didn't tell you, you would have stopped me. I love you. Now go be the king they need. Dominic roared. The sound tore from somewhere deeper than his chest, from his soul, from his caged wolf, from 12 years of anguish and the fresh agony of losing the only person who had ever seen him clearly. The cave walls shook. Crystals cracked and fell from the ceiling. The mountain itself seemed to tremble. She was gone. She'd left him. She was walking toward death, and he was trapped in a powerless body, unable to follow, unable to save her. The bond strained in his chest like a rope pulled too tight. She wasn't dead yet, he would have felt that, would have felt part of himself die with her. But she was far away and getting farther. Moving toward something terrible. Moving toward sacrifice. Dominic fell to his knees. For the first time since his curse, he prayed. Please. The word came out broken. Moon goddess. Mother. Father. Sarah. Anyone who's listening. Please. He pressed his forehead to the cold stone floor. I cannot lose her. She is everything. She is the only good thing that has happened in 12 years of darkness, and I will not. His voice cracked. I'll give anything. Anything. My crown. My vengeance. My life. Take it all. Just let me save her. Silence answered him. The cave was empty, the mountain was quiet, and the gods didn't respond to desperate men. Dominic closed his eyes. And his wolf answered. It came like a thunderclap, a surge of power that exploded through his body, shattering chains he'd forgotten were there. His wolf, caged for 12 years, howled inside him with a force that rattled his bones. The curse cracked. Not from Clara's sacrifice, she hadn't made it yet. But from something else. Something the curse had been designed to test. Real love. True love. The kind that chose sacrifice over power, that chose another's life over its own, that was willing to lose everything rather than gain anything through harm. Silas had corrupted the curse to make it unbreakable. But Silas didn't understand love. He designed the curse assuming someone would try to use Clara's death for power. He never imagined someone would reject that power to save her. Dominic's willingness to lose everything, his throne, his vengeance, his future, broke the corruption. His wolf surged free. The shift came faster and more violently than any he'd experienced before. Bones cracked and reformed. Muscles tore and regrew. His vision sharpened, his senses expanded, and power, raw, magnificent, royal power, flooded through him like a river finally freed from a dam. When it was done, a wolf stood where a man had knelt. Massive. White as fresh snow. Eyes of molten gold that blazed with alpha authority. The true alpha king form. The one that hadn't been seen in 12 years. He wasn't fully powered, that still required Clara's sacrifice, but he was enough. Dominic threw back his head and howled. Then he ran. Clara walked into Silas's camp at dawn. The wolves parted before her, snarling but wary. Her magic blazed around her like silver armor, bright enough to hurt their eyes. She looked like a goddess of vengeance, terrible and beautiful, walking calmly toward the monster who had destroyed everything she might have loved. Silas waited at the center of the camp, human form, arms crossed, smile playing at his lips. The witch's daughter with the witch's power. His voice dripped with amusement. How poetic. Did you come to bargain for your mate's life? No. Clara stopped 10 feet from him, close enough to see the cruelty in his eyes. I came to end this. His smile widened. End this? Little girl, you don't have the power to end anything. You're barely a day into your magic. I've been Alpha King for 12 years. And yet you need a curse to keep your brother contained. Clara let her power flare brighter. What does that say about your strength? The smile flickered. Just slightly. Enough to tell her she'd drawn blood. I'm offering you a trade, Clara continued. My magic, all of it, freely given. In exchange for Dominic's complete curse breaking and your agreement to face him in single combat. The old way. Alpha against alpha. Silas laughed. You're bluffing. That curse requires your death. Not your magic. Your blood. The curse requires my willing sacrifice. Clara held up her wrist, where her birthmark blazed silver. My mother's magic changed the terms. I can give my power instead of my life, but only willingly. Kill me, and Dominic stays cursed. Force me, and it doesn't work. Accept my bargain, and you get to fight a fully powered Alpha King. She stepped closer, letting him see the certainty in her eyes. I know you, Silas. I've watched you for 22 years. You've always needed to prove you're the strongest. That's why you killed your family, because you couldn't stand being second. That's why you kept Dominic on your desk, because defeating him once wasn't enough. Her voice dropped, soft and venomous. Here's your chance to defeat him for real. Full power. Fair fight. In front of all the packs. Imagine what that would do for your legend. Silas's eyes glittered with calculation. She could see him weighing the offer, measuring his arrogance against his caution. He'd been Alpha King for 12 years. He'd killed challengers by the dozen. He'd built his throne on the bodies of everyone who'd ever questioned him. A chance to defeat Dominic at full power, publicly, permanently? That would cement his rule forever. You would sacrifice your magic, he asked. Become nothing again? For him? Yes. Even knowing what he'll face? Even knowing he might lose? He won't lose. Clara smiled. He has something you never will. And what's that? Something to fight for. Silas considered for one more moment. Then he laughed, a genuine laugh, delighted by her audacity. I accept your bargain, witch's daughter. Give me your power, break my brother's curse, and I will tear him apart in front of the 12 packs. Clara nodded. Then she began the sacrifice. Pulling magic out of herself was worse than she'd imagined. It felt like having her soul extracted thread by thread, like every nerve in her body was being slowly set on fire. Silver light streamed from her chest, her eyes, her birthmark, flowing out of her and into the bond, into Dominic, wherever he was. She felt the curse shatter. Felt his wolf explode free. Felt power that had been locked away for 12 years finally returned to its rightful owner. When it was done, Clara collapsed. Human again. Powerless again. Empty in ways she hadn't known she could be empty. But alive. She lay on the cold ground, gasping, as Silas's wolves circled closer. She had no magic to protect herself now. No strength left to run. She'd gambled everything on Dominic reaching her in time. A howl split the morning air. Every wolf in the camp went rigid. The sound rolled over them like a wave, alpha authority so pure and absolute that their bodies responded before their minds could catch up. One by one, they dropped to their knees, heads bowed, throats bared. Even Silas's most loyal fighters submitted. A white wolf exploded into the clearing, massive, magnificent, blazing with power that hurt to look at. He shifted mid-stride, and suddenly Dominic stood there in human form, naked and scarred and more beautiful than anything Clara had ever seen. His eyes found her first. Relief and fury warred across his features. You impossible, beautiful, infuriating woman. Then he looked at Silas. Hello, brother. His voice was ice and fire. I believe you owe me 12 years. Silas shifted. His black wolf was huge, battle-scarred, powerful. But next to Dominic's white wolf, he looked diminished. Lesser. A pretender standing next to a king. They crashed together with the force of colliding storms. Clara watched, helpless, as her mate fought for their future. The brothers tore at each other with claws and fangs, drawing blood, breaking bones, neither willing to yield. 12 years of hatred unleashed in a battle that shook the ground. At first, they were evenly matched. Silas was experienced, vicious, willing to use every dirty trick in his arsenal. Dominic was newly restored, still finding his balance after years of imprisonment. But Dominic had something Silas didn't. Something to fight for. Every time Silas gained ground, Dominic pushed back harder. Every wound he took, he returned twofold. He wasn't fighting for vengeance anymore, he was fighting for Clara, for their future, for the chance to build something beautiful from all this ruin. Love made him stronger. Love made him unstoppable. The fight turned. Dominic caught Silas's throat in his jaws and threw him across the clearing. Before Silas could recover, Dominic was on him, pinning him to the ground, claws pressed against his brother's throat. He shifted to human, keeping Silas trapped beneath him. Any last words, brother? Silas laughed. Even beaten, even bleeding, he laughed. You think killing me ends this? I have allies, Dominic. I have plans. Documentation. Leverage. His smile was bloody and triumphant. Kill me, and the evidence of your family's murder dies too. The packs will see you as a usurper, not a savior. You'll spend your reign fighting rebellions. Dominic hesitated. Clara saw the doubt flicker across his face, the realization that Silas was right. Killing him solved nothing. Killing him made Dominic a kinslayer with no proof of justification. Don't kill him. Clara's voice was weak, but it carried. Both brothers turned to look at her. Break him. Dominic's eyes widened with understanding. He didn't kill Silas. He did something worse. The old rites of forced submission hadn't been used in generations. They were considered too cruel, too permanent. But Dominic knew them. His mother had taught him, just in case. He pressed his claws deeper into Silas's throat and spoke words in the old tongue. Words of power, of dominance, of absolute authority. And he stripped his brother's wolf away. Silas screamed. Not from physical pain, from something deeper. The severing of his wolf bond, the destruction of everything that made him alpha, the reduction from king to nothing. When it was done, Silas lay on the ground, human and broken and completely powerless. Beta Marcus. Dominic's voice rang across the clearing. I know you've been keeping records. Insurance against the day your master fell. Release them. Marcus emerged from the crowd of kneeling wolves, his expression calculating. He'd survived this long by knowing when to switch allegiances. The evidence of the Varan massacre is extensive, he said, pulling a leather satchel from his coat. Guard rotations proving the palace was deliberately left undefended. Witness statements from servants who survived. Financial records showing payments to mercenaries. Everything the Council of Alphas will need for a trial. Dominic took the satchel without looking at it. His eyes stayed on Silas. You don't get to die, brother. You get to live. Packless. Wolfless. Powerless. You get to watch me rebuild everything you destroyed, and you get to do it from a cell where everyone can see what you've become. Guards dragged Silas away. He didn't fight, couldn't fight. He was nothing now. Worse than nothing. Dominic turned to Clara and crossed the distance between them in 3 strides. He dropped to his knees beside her, gathering her into his arms. Never do that again, he growled against her hair. Never leave me like that again. It worked, didn't it? I don't care if it worked. I care that you're alive. He pulled back to look at her face. You're alive. You're really alive. I promised I'd choose, Clara whispered. I just chose differently than you expected. He kissed her then, fierce and desperate and full of everything they'd almost lost. 1 month later, the Winter Palace rose from the ashes. Not the same palace, that was gone forever, burned by Silas's treachery. But something new had been built on the old foundations. Something that honored the past while reaching toward the future. Representatives from all 12 packs gathered for the coronation of Alpha King Dominic Varan. The returned king. The rightful ruler. The man who had survived the unsurvivable and reclaimed what was stolen. Clara stood beside him, dressed not as a servant but as a queen. White silk embroidered with silver moons, a crown of winter roses in her hair, the mate mark visible on her throat for all to see. She had no magic. No wolf. No supernatural power of any kind. But she was also the woman who had broken a curse with a kiss, faced down a tyrant with a bargain, and sacrificed everything for love. The high priestess placed the crown on Dominic's head, and the assembled wolves knelt as one. All hail Alpha King Dominic Varan. Long may he reign. Clara felt something flutter in her chest. A warmth. A spark. Something impossible and wonderful, blooming in the place where her magic used to live. She touched her wrist. Her birthmark was glowing. Faintly, barely visible, but unmistakably silver. A voice spoke directly into her mind, ancient, feminine, powerful. You sacrificed power for love, child. That is the rarest magic of all. I do not leave such gifts unrewarded. Clara gasped. Dominic caught her immediately, crown forgotten, concern flooding his features. What is it? What's wrong? Clara laughed. Wild and joyful and incredulous, the sound bubbling up from somewhere deep inside her. Nothing's wrong. She grabbed his hands, tears streaming down her face. I think the moon goddess just gave me a wolf. That night, under the full moon, Clara shifted for the first time. Her wolf was silver. Pure, blazing silver, the color of moonlight and magic and second chances. She was smaller than Dominic's white wolf but no less magnificent, no less powerful in her own way. She was finally what she was always meant to be. Dominic nuzzled her silver fur, his golden eyes bright with joy. Then he threw back his head and howled, a sound of triumph, of celebration, of love too vast to contain. Clara howled with him. Then they ran together through the snow-covered forest, the Alpha King and his mate, two wolves who had found each other against impossible odds. Finally, Clara belonged. I know you enjoyed this video. Do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel.